Welcome back to the Valisights podcast, the show for accountants, FP&A leaders, controllers, and CFOs who want to understand how leadership, operations, and AI are reshaping the future of business. I'm your host, Albert Ramos. Today's guest is one of the most influential voices shaping the modern finance field, Brian Kalish. I know you know him. You've seen him on LinkedIn. He's a globally recognized leader in FP&A, AI, and finance transformation. He's the founder of Kalish Consulting and principal at the BPK Group, and he serves as an advisor to Hyperbots, a lot of great news there as well, one of the most innovative agentic AI platforms for finance teams. So excited to chat about that. He's not just talking about the future of finance, which I love that we have guests like Brian on the show. He's helping build it. He's actually in it. From spearheading CFO roundtables to leading FP&A summits around the country, Brian has a front row seat to how top finance teams are leveraging technology, data, and human capital to evolve from reactive reporting to strategic, real-time decision-making. We need that. So here's what we're going to get into. We're going to dive into how agentic AI is transforming the role of FP&A, what it means to lead finance in a VUCA world, the real impact of modern data hubs, lessons from Hyperbots and the, as you've probably read about, the 6.5 million Series A funding that they just raised. That's exciting. And what the smartest finance leaders are doing to build future-ready teams. So we're going to jump right in. Brian, welcome to the Valisights podcast.
Oh, thank you so very much. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and I certainly appreciate the invitation to speak to the audience. So I'm very excited, and again, appreciative of your time today and all of our audience's time.
I can't wait to jump right in. I feel so lucky to be able to spend time with you, and I can't wait to learn because as I've learned already with a lot of your content and those that are connected with you, you have a ton of offer. And as I mentioned, you're in it. This isn't hype finance and AI. You're actually in it and building and partnering with. So why don't we jump right in? So you're one of the most prominent voices that I've mentioned in the FP&A world globally. What originally drew you into this space?
Well, I think what's interesting is that everyone's story tends to be a little bit different, and being an FP&A person, like there's not, the challenge is like you don't earn a degree in FP&A. So people,
Right.
And my attempts to be funny, I've decided in life I'm not going to tell you a funny story. I'll tell you a story, and you'll decide whether it's funny or not, right? Because it depends. So one of the things I try, and so when you speak a lot, there's attempts at humor, and one is FP&A to me is like Denny's or Burger King in the sense that no one goes there, you end up there, right? It's the kind of the idea that. There's very few people that are 22 years old coming out of university because you didn't earn a degree in FP&A who say, "Oh, when I grow up, I want to be an FP&A person." So, to give you a little story, so my background is actually in civil engineering.
Oh,
And I've
wow.
actually found that the plurality of people around the world, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. I mean, when we talk, everything we're talking about is global. This isn't a North American issue. This isn't a European issue, MENA, or anything else. This is so that's part of what I love about it is the fact that it's truly universal.
Right.
But I found that a plurality of people that end up in FP&A specifically come from a science and math background.
Mm-hmm.
And using myself as an example in engineering, if you think about it, at the end of the day, all it is it's understanding the language of math and problem solving. And that's really what finance is all about. And FP&A in particular is answering the question why. So in my career, which started on a trading desk and moved into Treasury and then got involved in investor relations and ultimately into FP&A, I just love FP&A because it's about solving problems, right? That's where and the people that I find, it's kind of a unique group within finance. So obviously I'm very biased, but it's if you're not curious, it's very hard to be a successful FP&A person.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not taking, like I said, I've had many different roles. I don't have any accounting background, but from a treasury perspective, a lot of that's rules based. It's compliance. It's very nationalistic in the sense that the rules that are in Canada are not necessarily the rules that are in Mexico or the U.S. When we talk about finance and data analytics and forecasting and budgeting, it's truly universal. So I love it. I'm a geek. I'll freely admit that. But I think it's fascinating because we're really solving problems. Everything we do is actionable. So I probably can go on and on about that topic, but it's to me, it's just exciting. It's something new every day. There's different projects that we have. Again, whether it's someone like myself who work comes from the outside and goes in, or people on the inside solving their problems. It's really what is going to help companies make better, faster, smarter decisions. And to me, that's very interesting.
Oh, that's so good. And you got me thinking now, specifically about FP&A and the education. To your point, you kind of you end up there. There isn't today yet necessarily a route or pathway or degree that is a FP&A, what have you, right? But what I'm finding is with this, and we'll get into agentic workflows, AI, and even automation, especially in the accounting spot, which is forcing or influencing roles to be repositioned. And what we're finding is if you're good at the storytelling, the asking the whys you mentioned, right, problem solving, and start thinking more high level strategic, we're seeing a lot of those that were in the accounting space are doing some sort of task within that system and moving over into the FP&A space. And I'm wondering if that's going to change the education system too, knowing that some of these roles that are now owned by AI and even automation, the leader or professional needs to learn the FP&A side a lot more. Have you thought about that and just the evolution of education and certifications and all of that?
Yeah, so there's two things. So one, there is a certification in FP&A. I raised my hand because I was involved in creating it.
Yeah.
So and it's the only it's global because again the what you need to know in Asia is the same what you need to use in Europe. And then kind of interesting to your question is I actually teach at Florida International University,
I saw
and
that.
so it's kind of fun to add the academic level, which sometimes I actually get criticized that I'm sometimes a little bit too much of an academic, but happy to say that.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that university is about 20, 30 years behind the times. I mean,
Mm,
just broadly for creating criteria. I think your question is just so spot on, which is a lot of the skills that universities are teaching right now for finance are basically not going to be around in a couple, and I mean just a couple of years. So I mean,
right.
it's not apples to apples, but it's the idea of you take something like shorthand, right? Critical, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Like if you didn't know shorthand, you couldn't be what we'd actually call a secretary, to be an assistant, an executive assistant today. But like that was, you either had that skill or you didn't have it.
Right.
It's going to be very much the same way that, people that have made careers out of being what I call data wranglers, a lot of that is just going to go away in a
Yeah.
very good way. And I know we do, people talk about like how is finance reacting to AI. We can touch on that too, but
Hmm.
it's uncertainty, and humans don't like uncertainty. So it's always funny because when I talk about finance, it's about half calculus and half psychology because you're dealing with people, right? And you have to, and the same thing with FP&A, right? And again, because the idea of you're not going to be a successful FP&A person sitting in an office crunching numbers.
Hmm.
You really need three skills. You've kind of touched on them. You may have all touched on all three of them, which is I'm looking for a quant that tells great stories and completely understands my business.
Right.
And the challenge is those aren't complementary skills.
It's true. Well,
So,
especially if you come up the traditional finance route, you're
right.
not necessarily picking those things up. Hopefully, you had a mentor coach or you had a professor like you that is teaching those things that takes you out of that cookie cutter box, which it's okay to be within it. But now we're saying you're going to need to evolve your skill set and upskill. And to your point, it's truly understanding how you can make an impact in the business, right? Your ability to storytell, communicate. And then I love that, I have an economics background too. And one of the things that I love, right? It's what originally in economics is, the human being is rational. Wait a second. Out comes behavioral economics, right? And we learned so much, like actually not so much. We're not that rational. So I think of behavioral finance as well. I think that's what you were alluding to.
Yeah.
So that's so exciting. Well, speaking of AI, right? You've been very involved and you know what? Forget those critics because you have the academic and at times even framework or theoretical framework, but you're also in it, sir. So, kudos to you is you teach it, you're looking at things high level within frameworks, but you're also getting in and you're finding out ground truth in the trenches. And a lot of people do both. So that's exciting. So you described actually in some recent posts and in some of your conversations, agentic AI as being the true transformational leap in finance. So for those that are still trying to figure out, well, what is that? This AI or this, what they do maybe on a daily or weekly prompting and just doing your chat, and sometimes people call it search, to the GPT or even agent or agentic workflow. Can you explain that to the audience?
Sure. So first of all, anyone that's listening today is don't feel bad if you don't know what agentic AI is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first part.
Right.
And I think what's happened, and it's a critical question. I mean, almost one of like anything that we're going to talk about today. That's like number one. Is when we're talking about agentic AI, we're not talking about generative AI.
Right.
So generative AI is fantastic for creating, artwork and for creating text. And it's actually something for myself that I kind of look in the world now as a pre and a post pandemic world. So it's like, was that a thought I had before 2020 or after 2020? And so I was someone so very big on RPAs, the robotic process automation. I believed at the time, that you could, for a public company, that you could start automating at least your first draft. So think about before AI, and doesn't mean I'm the sharpest tool in the shed, but it was my belief that you could automate your first draft of your MD&A.
Mm-hmm.
If you had enough content, right? Because for every metric, there was some language that was involved in it. And you could automate looking for a particular change. And you at least would come up with that first draft. And I mean, that's like talking, I'm talking about like, this is the equivalent of talking about a macro in Excel, right? It's just something to make things a little bit better. And so generative AI is fantastic. But when we're talking about agentic, we're really talking about what I would call an agentic comes from agent, right? When we're talking about agent, we're talking about, for lack of a better term, an electronic employee.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about is if people are familiar with RPA, robotic process automation, it's fantastic. I'm a huge believer in it pre where we are today.
Right.
But the idea that you would find a repetitive task and you and I, with a little bit of training, could build a bot, because a bot's just code at the end of the day,
Right.
that would automate that process and save me time and tremendous, huge ROI on it. I think London School of Economics put out a paper that RPA, say has an ROI of between 30 and 200%.
Wow.
So it was something people definitely should be looking at. The challenge is it's a process problem more often than an automation problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a different story. But when we're talking about AI, excuse me, agentic AI, we're talking about is actually creating an electronic agent that this will make people a little bit nervous, that can think. And so it's the idea that it can basically look at a lot of data, and it can be structured or unstructured, and take out those key elements that help you solve a problem. And so one of the things people talk about, this sounds like it's science fiction. And again, my attempts at humor is the difference between science fiction and technology is time, right?
So spot on.
so someone, again, we could do another piece on this. I believe that all technology is based on Star Trek, the TV show. I've written a paper about that, but it's
I
just
love
the
it.
idea that if we think about it, we probably can have it. And so what we're talking about is activities that humans are doing today that we basically can create an agent that can learn how to look at a problem, solve the problem, and then makes the recommendation to the human. And so one thing that I want to jump in real quick in is I'm a believer very broadly. Not everyone's going to make the journey. We know that. But I very broadly believe that AI is not going to replace people.
Mm-hmm.
People that use AI are going to replace people who don't use AI.
Right.
It's a tool at the end of the day. So it's the idea of anything that a human's doing today, to some degree, I can create an agent using AI to perform very broadly using the Pareto rule, 80% of what that activity is.
Right. And you use the word today, and you see a lot of content on LinkedIn and elsewhere about this agentic wave, right? Agentic workflows and even just agents. And we won't get into AGI or anything like that today because I know that's in the works, but agents, you say today. A lot of people think this is 4 or 5 years down the road. And what I've seen you say or hear you say today and in your recent posts as well is agentic AI agents are here now, right? They're here today, not a future concept. You're seeing it live, integrated within financial workflows?
Yes, absolutely. So what's interesting is, again, it, like I said, you and I can create a bot in
Mm-hmm.
a couple of minutes. You and I cannot create an agentic AI. The level of technical expertise
Right.
is on a different scale. So, given that, what we've seen really over the last 24 months is a number of, I would say it's kind of interesting. It's been much more in the startup space than
Mm-hmm.
it has been in legacy technology because it's hard to change something that already
You got
exists.
to
It's a little bit
unravel.
easier to start from scratch.
Right.
Uh, if we have time, I have maybe a useful analogy for that. But so if you think about, you know, if you came to me today and said, is it possible to take the accounts receivable function, the accounts payable function, and create a agentic AI workforce to do that work? Yes, it can it's not it can be done today, it's being done today. And companies are, what we certainly consider more cutting edge organizations, they're adapting it today because the benefits are just so uh, manifold. I mean, it's the benefit, again, without sounding too hypey, and I know I can certainly sound that way, is, I think we're truly living in the industrial revolution in real time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's happening. So if you think about any function that you could get a higher return using an agent than a human, that's an opportunity to leverage. And the other really powerful point about agentic AI is if you think about it, it's a system,
Mm-hmm.
right? So well, I like using myself as an example. So I work for you and I come up with a problem and you go, oh, Brian, let me explain to you how you fix it. Then I learn, right? But if I have 20 coworkers who didn't ask you that question, they don't learn that,
Right.
right? With an agent, when the human explains something to it, every agent now knows that piece of information. So you think about it, that's not linear, that's exponential, right? And so that's one of the more powerful pieces. It's not just what it can accomplish today, but it's what it can learn tomorrow and then share along a much broader universe
I'm
of
hoping
your
people.
workforce. And that's how you have to really think about it. And again, I know it's a hard thing for some people to get on. It's just another element of your workforce. It's just another tool.
Yeah.
That's all we're talking about here.
I love it. And I hope people rewind that. Just go back about 30 seconds there and replay that one because that's not only in the now, but that's going to get even better and better. And AI will be infrastructure. It will know every error and every favorable thing that happens at all times, right? And so what you're recognizing is this infrastructure knowledge base, this brain. Everything is a data point. Every action, everything an employee does, and even personally too, is a data point that can be saved, that can be worked upon, right? That can be queried. It's so interesting. Now, to go back a little bit, because you preface as you began talking about agentic AI and the ability to think, you said this may make people nervous, right? And I can relate with that. I feel as you're having conversations with, I'm sure, other executives globally, you're getting the same response: the wide eyes, the like funny looking faces, like, whoa, I don't know what's going on there. So what do you recommend as you've gone through and had these conversations? What's the number one mindset shift for CFOs and even any executive or leader that needs to make this change, this leveraging agentic AI within their enterprise, within their business, what is that? What is going to be required to make that shift? Is it education? Is it things like this? What is it?
Yeah, I think it's learning. So here's part of the challenge that we have is in the Office of Finance, we already work 26 hours a day, 8 days a week, 60 weeks a year, right? And we're not technology people. And what's happened over the last 13 years with the introduction of the cloud um, is that if you want your life to get better in the Office of Finance, you have to be the champion, right?
Mm,
You know what your
totally.
problems are. And again, because you're going to have to spend capital. I mean, again, we haven't even talked about change management, and I think you're kind of
Right.
alluding to it, but it's doing things in a new way. And I don't have as catchy a phrase as I had for RPA, but I still use it. Is the idea that automation equals liberation, right?
Mm,
And I haven't quite figured out how to get AI to sound as cute as that. But it's if you so give you an idea, a year ago, I was being interviewed, and someone said, "Well, where do you think the Office of Finance is as far as adoption of AI?" And on a scale of 0 to 10, I would have said a 3. A year later, I would tell you it's a 1.
mm,
It just isn't being levered because people don't understand what it is. So I think we're
right.
still in uh, you know, you have to have aware. So you have to have awareness before you can have engagement, before you can have action. And I
Right.
really think we're just in that awareness. Is that people, you know, ChatGPT was such a big thing in 23 and into 24, and that's what people think AI is. What we're talking about with agentic is, I think, where you could get one of the biggest bangs. What CFOs really need to do is start asking bigger questions. Right? Is when I take on an engagement, the first thing I ask people is, what are the 3 things you don't know about your company today that if you did would really move the needle? And that's what, from a data point, from a data perspective, right?
Right.
That's what agentic AI can potentially do for us because of the abilities or the characteristics it has, but it's multiplicative with the human, right? And it's not an either or. And it's like one of the things that people ask me is, what's like the biggest mistake that people in finance are making about AI? And I would tell you, they think it can do everything, and it can't. You just have to understand what abilities it has, and you leverage those abilities. So it's almost, 2 sides of a coin. You've got the human who has tremendous value. It's just that we've spent my career, which is roughly 30 years, which it hurts me a little bit, but it's, of spending way, way too much of hiring these incredibly high QI people doing low IQ activities.
Mm,
And so what we're trying to do is to shift that low IQ activity off of their plates to then really give, again, you have to crawl before you can walk, before you run, before you can fly. But agentic AI is what's going to let the Office of Finance fly
right.
because it will free the humans of activities that have to be done and let them spend much more time on the activities they should be doing.
I think you came up with your phrase. AI will make the office and finance fly. There you go.
That's it. I like
There it is. I love it. Well, you have your finger globally. You have your finger on the pulse. So when it comes to investment and even going back to this adoption, right? Awareness, education, this adoption, and then prior to action, what are you seeing across the world? Whether it be what you're seeing here in the U.S. domestically or internationally, who is really leaning in here, who's not from your experience, and maybe they just need an additional push or maybe investment or education, what have you. What are you seeing across the world?
So what's fascinating is I couldn't give you like, oh, it's healthcare in South America
Hmm.
that's leading edge. It really comes down to, and it's something I think we even may have chatted about in the past. it's this combination of people, process, technology, and culture,
Right.
right? And you have to have all the pieces in place.
Mm.
So, you know, you can have tremendous technology and great people, but if it's not in a culture that really wants to leverage this, it doesn't go anywhere.
Mm.
And so, what I'm finding is sometimes it's the companies that, again, from not just from the technology providers, but from the companies themselves, which is startups have this wonderful ability of saying, let's just focus on AR and AP, for example. And it's not like, well, how do I bring that in and free up my people and let them do this? It's like, I never have to hire an AR person. I'm never going to hire an AP person, right? Because I'm just going to start with AI. And so I think as companies are looking at the opportunity to change their workforce. So, the classic is, and I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, it's like, oh yeah, we just outsourced, function XYZ. And I'm like, you might want to look at AI.
Yeah.
And it was at the end of the day, it's like, oh, but if they
Yeah.
don't know, people don't know. So I think a lot of it is, again, it's just a matter of understanding what the art of the possible is,
Hmm.
because it's just so easy. And this isn't, picking on anyone, because it's everyone, right? It's just so easy to do today what you did yesterday.
Right. It's so
And
true.
so and it's interesting. I mean, as you were saying, I just found out I just have a work assignment in Brunei that started yesterday, and I'm not taking anything away from people that live on the island of Borneo, but I did not know where Brunei was, and I actually had to look it up. But the fact that they want me to come and literally help them on an AI based project, right? So when you
Yeah.
ask, well, it's in Brunei, but it's also in the U.S. and it's in Germany. And so I just think it's understanding that you can solve a lot of the problems that you have today by investing in technology, but also be willing to spend the money to train your people. What I've seen is there's this belief that technology is the solution,
Hmm.
and it's never the solution. It's
Right.
a tool.
It's a tool.
It's a
Yeah.
tool. And that's what I think happens is you have the situation where people have bought technology as a solution and it hasn't worked out for them. And so they're a little, now we're talking roughly 13 years since the cloud got introduced, right? Is there's a lot of disappointment in what they've had from a technology. It's been overpromised and underdelivered. And a lot of times, in all fairness, that's the company, right? They didn't do a good implementation. It
Right.
wasn't the technology itself. It wasn't even. I'm not trying to sound defensive. It wasn't the consultants. It was that they didn't know what problem they were trying to solve for.
Oh, it's so
It
good.
was surprised to find out the technology didn't solve it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And clearly you're in it. What I find, and when I'm offering recommendations and advice, people ask me, what tool should I get? I'm like, wait a second, you're asking the wrong question, right? Now, I found that there's tension points with AI, not just the learning and adoption, but then there's this tension points even in the finance space or in partnership with your CIO or someone in the IT spaces. Is it secure? Am I going to get an ROI? And can I trust it? Right.
Right.
And I'm out here on LinkedIn and some other podcasts, et cetera, saying, yeah, absolutely. You can't, so long as you have the right firewalls, your server, et cetera, and the security, yes, you can do it. And it's getting even better, right? And a lot of these big players like Microsoft and some others have that ingrained in certain tiers, right? Can you get an ROI? And I'm going to come back to that because it's going to be the point. And then can I trust it? Yes and no, right? It's getting better, right? But is it foolproof where you say AI has it all?
No.
Not yet, but it will. It will at some point get very close to, right? So back to the ROI piece, right? And there's some questions on LinkedIn that I wanted to ask you too, right? But you mentioned, well, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And I think people skip that. It's let's get AI to get AI, or let's automate everything because we want to automate. I'm like, well, before you build it or purchase or invest, what are you solving for?
Right.
And that's what you need to find out first. If you're just trying to, I'm an AI first company, great. What is that? What do you mean by that? What are you solving for? Or else you're just gonna have projects that fail. You're going to automate and then be stuck with your garbage in, garbage out, right? Similar with the AI, but it's what are you truly trying to solve for? And let's start small. Let's start simple. Let's start with low hanging fruit. And that's where I found a lot of the successes have happened versus, well, we're going to purchase, we're going to buy, we're going to invest, and then we'll figure out when we use AI, it's sure going to create a lot of ROI. I'm like, oh, that's a tough one. I don't know about that strategy.
Absolutely. So, I mean, in one of my classes we do these experiments, we try to have fun with people, right? And so, you show them the picture of a Home Depot, and you go, what's the best tool that you can only buy one tool? What's the one tool you would buy in a Home Depot? And people come up with all sorts of great ideas, and they get really creative. Like, it's like, well, does a wrench set count, or does it just have to be a wrench? And so I love how they go with that. And then, so they'll come up with all the answers, and I go, okay, well, what are you trying to solve for? And it was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Like I said, and it's just when I talk about the psychology part, I mean, that's part of the challenge is, to me, it's somewhat similar. As an example, people go, working with the companies, oh, should I do a rolling forecast? And I go, what decision are you going to do based on that? And they're like, well, we don't know. It's like, well, then you might not want to do it, right? Is there has to be, everything we do has to have some action associated with it. And you have to understand what the problem you're solving for. And I think the other thing that is very different between RPA and agentic AI is that I would have told you should not buy or invest in a technology that is activity specific from an RPA perspective. What you should learn is how to build bots, right? And have a single technology for that. And we don't need to say any names, but obviously there's companies that do that, right? Rather than, let me buy, Treasury specific RPA. And you're like, well, no, because it probably is not going to be able to do HR or finance or anything else.
Right.
What we've found with AI, it's the exact opposite, right? In the sense that if I need a finance person, I don't hire a lawyer, right? Is that the activities, the agents themselves are incredibly specific. And because the investment, the level of sophistication is so high, you really have to think about, well, if I buy, so if I'm going down the right path with you, so if I buy this tool, it will do any AI that I want it to in the organization, and go, nope, not at all. It's the same thing as that when you hire someone into marketing, can you throw them into sales? And they'll go, well, no, that's crazy. You wouldn't do that, right? Right. It's the same thing. So because we're dealing with a level of sophistication that's available to us, this is why PhDs are involved with this. When we start talking about large language models, and again, a lot on the tech side, it's very specific. So one of the questions people get up is like, well, will there, like today, if I want to do AP and AR, for example, what I'm seeing, and I always reserve the right to be smarter tomorrow than today, is that you can buy an AI tool that does AR, and you can buy an AR tool that does AP. And currently, there isn't a single tool that does both. That, I think that's the world that we're going to be in, because if you think about what we're asking it to do, is again very similar to a human. Is we want it to be an expert, right? None of us are experts on everything, and now I think it's also foolish to say just because it doesn't exist today doesn't mean it won't exist tomorrow. But at least in my horizon of, let's call it 3 to 5 years, I don't see an end all be all AI tool that will do HR and marketing and supply chain management and procurement and AR and AP. So I think that's part of the understanding, is that you're buying an electronic employee. And so again, if you're hiring it to do predictive analytics, it may not be your best salesperson.
It's so interesting, right? As you think about the modern finance leaders, you think about your finance tech stack. What you just heard, right, is so important to think. One, again, starting with what is the problem you're looking to solve for, and what are the tasks or roles, right? So the electronic employee, or the digital species, as I like to call it.
I like that. That's great.
Just being very intentional, right? Being very mindful. This isn't a do all things, be all things. It's not how it works as it stands today, and probably not for a while, right? So it's just being very mindful of what is your tech stack, and what are each of those tools solving for. By the way, speaking of a tool, and I know you were very involved here, but Hyperbots, I'm a big fan, shouting them out here. They just raised close to 7 mil in a Series A injection here, in Series A round. What do you I've told people, right, especially recently, like, I want to get into AI and the invoicing, ARAP. I'm like, yes, and it's very saturated, and there's some big players and there's some exciting players like Hyperbots. Why do you think investors are so excited about this category within our space?
Sure. So I'm going to borrow from a CFO I was talking to recently. And basically, what she was saying is, I don't talk from a technology perspective unless it's AI first and it's a startup, because everything else is a retrofit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fair argument. I mean, people are like, and I think you set it up very well. Is like, why should I look at these startups when obviously there's some much bigger players that are out there?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say twofold in my humble opinion. So one is their battleships, right? And it takes a long, hard process to change that. And part of it is the idea it wasn't built to be AI leveraging, right?
Right.
It was built for something else. I mean, we back to ERPs; they've been around since the '60s,
Right.
right? And they do a fantastic job. But everyone, hope we don't get in any trouble, but everyone's slapping AI on whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
It's AI enhanced, it's AI
So wait
advantaged.
a second, that's automation.
Yeah, but it wasn't designed to leverage today's technology.
Right.
And so I want to get to hyperbots because I'm very excited about them. But to maybe a useful analogy is, so I have an Alfa Romeo Tenali hybrid. And the reason I bring that up is it was designed to be a plug-in hybrid. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't designed to be a gas-powered car that they said, okay, now we're going to retrofit it to, enhance it, right? Is that probably, isn't the right way to do it. If you have the opportunity to say, well, this was something that was built exactly like it, and you, just for fun, if you're interested, and I'm a little bit of a car guy, but if you're interested, go to YouTube, which has all the
Check it
information
out.
you need, and look at some of the reviews, and it's really cool because it's a dual power source, and for its size, it turns, you know, 285 horsepower on a 4,000-pound vehicle, which basically gives you a rocket. And so
That's awesome. You're just gunning
that,
it.
that's just kind of a side note on the technology. But it's the idea that if you think about your house or anything else that was built without air conditioning, and then you put air conditioning in, yes, you'll get it, but it wasn't designed to do that. And so I think you take something like with hyperbots and you know their focus on AP and realize again, it's to me it's incredible because again I'm a finance guy who knows a little bit about technology, so it makes me dangerous. But if you think about the idea of just being able to read structured and unstructured data
Mm-hmm.
in any format, and you now have you know the technology that can read that can take out the parts that really matter, that can populate, that can make recommendations. So one of the things for me that as I was working with the folks from Hyper about the idea of just say something like AP and saying, should as a function of my cost of capital, should I be taking advantage of discounts and pay early, right? That's a relatively simple problem to write down. It's incredibly difficult to solve for because you have to get all these disparate data sources to understand what that decision should be. And
Right.
what's great about in this case with hyperbots, it will make a recommendation. Now we're not quite to the point. Again, everyone at some point is going to say, "Oh, I don't even need to look at the recommendation. Trust has been built." right? Same thing with almost everything in life. It's trust but verify.
Right.
But the idea that in the background, for all intents and purposes, that is coming to say, oh, this is now the priority of whether it's AR or AP that you should be queuing it, because that's not how it's done today, right? For the most part, if my payment terms, are, plus 20, I pay on the 20th day. I might want
Right.
to even pay on the 21st day. But it's just the idea that now, and basically, it's probably kind of thinking about the data hub um, perspective, is you're now taking the ability to take, I love this term, now we live in a world of brontobytes, 10 to the 27th power of data. And so you're taking all of these different points and being able to bring all that information that a human just can't efficiently do. And I think why, again, using hyperbots as an example, why there's so much interest, and obviously, people are putting their money where their mouth is, right? You don't just, drop it, that Series A funding,
Right.
is the fact that they've been successful and they see just really, the opportunity, and they have the whole concept. If people are interested, they should definitely go to the website.
Yeah.
But it's built on the concept of co-pilots, which I think fits in very well with the discussion we're having, which is, here is a tool to help us do our jobs better. And again, you have, a variance analysis co-pilot. You have an AR, co-pilot. You have, potentially an AP. Again, it's the idea that all these different tools, but because um, you want to have it as pre-built, and that's the other thing that companies don't have, right? It's not pre-built, and so you have this incredibly steep learning curve
Hmm.
that your AI has to learn. I think what's happening now with organizations like Hyperbots is they're doing all that work. I mean, you're buying that work, right? But it's because you and I can't do it, right? And
As
and
quickly,
and
as
I'll be
quickly, and
kind.
as
I'll say
precise.
we're really smart. Well, not really smart, well, not in my case, but relatively smart people, and say it's something I can never do, right?
Mm.
And the fact that we're now leveraging people, that are, from my perspective, just off the charts, you know, intellectual firepower,
Right.
who have the ability to do that. That's why I think that there's so much excitement about it, and it's real. I mean, that's the other thing too. It's
Yeah.
because people are like, "Is this the .com all over again?" Which is a fair, right? Because
Yeah.
we were burned pretty good once, and it's like, no, this is real, and
Yeah.
that's why I think people were so excited about it, because it's just like you're saying on the the return on investment, is the opportunity is just so massive, because we can use this all across. And I mean, we're focused on the office of finance, but getting to the point of, why don't we run more scenarios? Because we don't have enough time, right? If
So
we
good.
leverage things to, we don't do a lot of things that we should be doing, because we have this constraint called time that we can't make. And so all we can do
I gotta
is,
sleep, Ryan. I gotta sleep.
well, guess what? AI does it, right?
Exactly. No, it's so good. Big shout outs to Hyperbots. I remember meeting the team, so excited for them. And you're to your point, it's real. And I got jealous, right? So we launched Valisights about from this recording about 3 to 4 months ago, although testing it over the last 2 years. And I saw so many people spending time in the AR AP invoicing space. And I said, wait a second here, right? What's going on in the FP&A strategic finance space, and how can we use this and leverage this technology to be more precise, right? You think, and we've both been in it, right? Those days and those hours that you spent time building models, building cash flow forecasts, right? And then maintaining them, not just building them and making it click, right? And making sure that the variances, you're mitigating any variance on both ends, but then it's the maintaining and all of that. Or even, and I love what you were saying earlier. It's like, okay, yes, you have these data hubs. Yes, it's taking care of some of the tasks that a human will now. And then you can also gather recommendations. It gives you recommendations. And with Valisights, that's what we're doing too. Because I've always been on you close the month, you have this great executive package, or let's just call it your P&L and your balance sheet. And what I've seen a lot, I've seen leaders do this, is they get it. Like, okay, I know what revenue or that is it, to budget, EBITDA, or whatever contribution margin. And then that's it, file it away. It's like, there's not really a lot of thought on, okay, what next? So what? Why is this important? And so that's where Valisights came in. And I know you had an opportunity to take a look, but we're really excited to get your feedback on what you're seeing AI in the FP&A strategic finance space, including cash flow, where Valisights is spending a lot of time. So yeah, I wanted to get your feedback there.
Absolutely. I mean, to me, and again, without sounding too terribly biased, is that I was very impressed with it, and I think part of it is if you think about, like you said, I think it's a great setup. Is that there's so much data, right?
Mhm.
But data doesn't help us make a decision, right? We got to take data and convert it into information, create insight. And I sit there and I highlighted that because people think insight and information is the same thing, and it's not. Insight is actionable information. And what happens is a lot of the reporting that is being done is information. What I care about from running my business is insights. And I think, like when we look at like your tool for in particular, it's finding patterns. So let's just talk about in cash flow. It's finding patterns that humans cannot identify.
Exactly.
Humans are great at finding patterns and trends they're looking for, and absolutely terrible at finding those that they're not. And
Right.
that was the one of the things. I mean, there were a number of things that certainly stood out to me when I was kind of kicking the tires and tearing. Like a car, I put it up on the lift and was taking a look at it,
I love it.
and is just that ability to find, hey, this is happening, and this is happening on a regular basis, but it's so small that you can't see you can see the trees for the forest. And so to me, one of the things was uncovering hidden patterns. You know, the other piece that I thought was really kind of cool. Again, I just liked how it was presented, and again, also I'm a very very big data visualization person.
Me
So the
too.
idea that we're trying to tell stories, there's a reason that there's this I don't know term, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? Is that's how we learn. This is again an area of my passion. Is like I'm a huge data viz person,
Right.
and again, the idea that we can take that, and take some, broad financial analysis and kind of show actually impactful data points and information and potentially insights to the organization. I thought that was pretty impressive. Now, you know, it's not my area of expertise, but I certainly love the fact you have a comply component to it. So the comply IQ is again, and it's a little bit interesting too. So I don't mean to put you on the spot. So I didn't see it, which doesn't mean the answer is I the focus has been on Gap. Is it also currently applicable on IFRS?
It is, yeah. So we
Yeah.
look at both. Yeah, I love that you mentioned because I know you have the global footprint. So we look at both, and we have many clients that are throughout, not just throughout domestically in the country, but throughout the world. And so we look at all of it, and whether it be your comply IQ or peer sites, as you're benchmarking against different industry standards and right and tax frameworks and rules are different across across the world. And so we took that all into consideration. And what I was also excited to ask you, and I won't announce it yet, but if you were to have, I love that you use the word co-pilot, but if you were to have an agent, a bot that can live within your ERP system, and I know many also out there use QuickBooks, is there anything, Brian, that you or maybe those that you spend your time with would want to know, would want to ask it and interact with it on as you think about the data that's within QuickBooks? And I'm not, and even this could be outside of the finance leader, right? Because we know what to go find, how to find it quickly. There's a lot out there that are responsible, responsible for QuickBooks, or maybe if they're even their ERP, and they're not the most savvy when it comes to finding. So having a agent, your co-pilot, to ask immediately, some questions. What would those questions be? Do you think some of the most common ones you think it would be?
So, if we, because it's so, what is very varied is the industry, right? What are the
Right.
things that are happening? So, and let me know if I'm addressing your question the proper way, is we're just trying to get real time insights as fast as we possibly can. And so, uh, one of the things that I have been shocked by or say disappointed by has been the lack of natural language. And so I don't know, you know, you know, I'm of a vintage. That's the way I like to say it. I'm of a vintage that we used to go into our offices when we went into offices and use the technology on the weekend because it was so much better than anything that we had at home. And I have been surprised by the fact that for most organizations, you step down when you walk into the office, right?
So
What you
true.
have at home is so much better than what you have at work. So I I love the question. I think it's understanding what I don't know today, or really understanding what those important KPIs are for the organization and how quickly I can get access to them.
So
Because
good.
a lot of times the problem is I get the report, you know, a month later, and there's no action that I can take. You know, it's how can I find out? And we can't find out everything. That's the other thing that is fascinating too. Is we have to manage expectations too.
Right.
Is one of the challenges that people have had is once they start having success, everyone wants an answer to everything immediately. And you go, no, no, I can answer some questions really, really quickly. I just can't answer every question really, really quickly.
Right.
And there's still the necessity for creating that priority of what is really important to the organization, because, in all fairness, I don't mean to denigrate anyone, but a lot of questions that are asked are not critical of the organization. And we have limited time. Like we still do, even leveraging AI, we still have leverage. Like I said, we're still required to sleep. And so what we're asking the humans to do is, just because we can answer any question, let's just put that out as the ground, doesn't mean I can answer every question immediately. So I think it goes back a little bit to what you were talking about, is you have to understand what the problem is.
Right.
Well, you also have to understand what's important. What do you really need to know? It's the whole, if I have 100 KPIs, I don't have any KPI, right? If
Exactly.
everything's important, nothing's important. So it's really finding out what would be key. And I think, again, stepping a little bit out of my swim lane, is when you're implementing the technology, is like, okay, what is the hierarchy of questions that you want to have answered?
Right. Oh, that's so good. I love the way you frame that up. That is so helpful. Well, this is great. And I know, I mean, I could talk to you for hours. I'm learning so much. I mean, this was truly a
Two ways.
masterclass. That was great. It's a masterclass in modern finance for the audience out there. And I hope you get a chance to rewind this, right? Watch and listen to it again, because there's a lot of questions, not even your thought process, but questions that Brian led with, that I think many of us modern finance leaders, or even executive CEOs, leaders, need to be asking. And we went through agentic AI, data hubs. We touched on that a little bit. There's so much there as you think about data security, ROI, as you think about, can we trust it, as where it's housed, what can query, how you can use these data points, right? Transforming FP&A as the traditional FP&A and transforming it into something of recommendations and insights, right? A strategic driver on what you're looking to do within your organization. I think that's exactly what the audience is needing to hear, not even just wanting, but needing to hear today. So Brian, thank you so much. Where can we learn more about you? There's some FP&A summits coming about. I'd love to even, I need to travel. I think there's one in Austin that you may be attending, but where can we
Yeah.
find you? How can we connect with you? And where can we see you?
Well, LinkedIn is actually, so I don't work for LinkedIn. I make no commission on them, but I found it to be a fantastic tool. So actually, that's my favorite mode. So anyone at any time should feel free to reach out to me. Uh, and then, because on LinkedIn, so one thing, so I know LinkedIn groups, for example, people have different opinions of them. So I have one which is the Global Society of FP&A Professionals.
Oh,
There's a
awesome.
lot of information on that, certainly on events and stuff. So, like I said, yeah, um, FP&A. There's a conference next month in Austin, and I travel all the time. And I try to keep people up to date on where I am. So even if I'm not there to speak, for example, I love to let people know where I'm going to be. So, I mean, the quick shout outs. I travel the U.S. all the time, but I actually will be in Brunei in July. I'll be in Dubai in August.
Wow.
And so I love Because I can tell you a number of times people are like, hey, I saw that you're going to be in Dubai. Do you have time for us to grab a coffee or a tea? And I was like, yeah, I love talking to people because
I love that.
that's how I learn. Again, it's such and I learned so much chatting with you today too, because I mean everyone knows so much, right? And everyone doesn't know so much. And
Right.
so the only way, one of the things people talk about, what's this value of peer to peer? It's like, because the reason that it's great to go to these live events is you have conversations that you never thought of ahead of time, right? You never would like I would never call you up and say, hey, let's just rap and see what direction it goes in, right? But in Austin next month, right? So there'll be a happy hour, and and with the speakers, and it's a really nice production because you know we can't answer all the questions live, but everyone's like there at lunch. We'll sit down with someone, meet someone. I was
That's
speaking in
such a good
Dubai
idea.
last year, and I told people like a goal at one of these events, depending on scale, is like I'm going to meet 15 people, and it's like normal because it's like it's hard like just in your normal day just to walk up to people and go, hey, let's talk,
Right. Right.
right? But at a conference, that's what you're expected to do. So that's
Mhm.
one of the reasons why you know obviously reading articles is fantastic, and going to and listening to podcasts is fantastic. But I don't think there's anything that just beats face to face, peer to peer opportunities
Yeah.
to learn and to share, because again, everyone has so much to offer. It's just a wonderful opportunity to learn, and I think just the basic rule I kind of have for myself when I wake up in the morning is my goal is to learn something every day.
So good. Well, we really appreciate your time and for teaching us. The professor, we love it for teaching us today. There's so many nuggets in there, and I can't wait for the audience to be able to lean in here and get some great takeaways. And we'll definitely connect with you, one, on your LinkedIn group. Thank you for sharing that, as well as on LinkedIn. And for those that are out in Dubai and some others throughout the country, as you follow along on when Brian's at. And I'll be in Austin. I'll see you soon, sir. Can't wait
Excellent.
to spend some time. But thank you. This has been an excellent episode. Thank you to the audience for being on. This is the Valisights podcast. Again, I'm your host, Albert Ramos, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Be well.